So we have an alter. His name is Nicky. He is a cat alter. He's actually broken a few windshields and a few items because anything dangly, he smacks. Because what is one way cats are advertised constantly online, constantly everywhere? They smack things. They break things.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I am your host, Todd Rennebaum. Thank you for tuning in for another great episode, another week, and another amazing guest. This week I am speaking with the incredibly fascinating, highly informative, extremely charming, the Junebug system. Now, what is a Junebug system? Well, Junebug system is a body filled with many different people. Junebug specifically is a 6-year-old girl, but there's many other people in there. There's even a cat in there, this system is suffers with DID, or dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, or whatever else they used to call it. But anyway, it's now DID, so remember that. Quite a few episodes back, I spoke with another young person, Trash, and they also have DID, but this is the Junebug system, and it's different. She explains how it's different, but yeah, she's fascinating. She is very well spoken, and she explains things very, very well. She's also married, has a child, and she explains how it's like juggling all that. And she does have some professional help that comes in and that spends the days and stuff with her, and with her mate Cody. But yeah, that's all in this episode. But before we listen to that, I want to tell you about next week. Next week I'm speaking with an incredible young lady. Her name is Shiva Sauri, and she is from Iran, and she is new to Canada. She's been here maybe a couple years as a student at the U of R. And she's been, we talk about what it's just like to be an immigrant and a student. She suffers from anxiety and depression, and now she's watching her family go through this revolution, as she calls it. It's no longer protests, and just growing up in a regime like that. She has lost family members. She knows friends, and she has family fighting right now and stuff. And It's a very emotional and heartbreaking story, but it's also filled with a lot of hope for change in her country and for, especially for the females in her country of Iran. But now back to this week's episode with the Junebug system. So without further ado, I give you the Junebug system.
With a lot of therapy and EMDR, we've actually become a fairly functioning system as a whole. We do have 30 plus different members in our system, some that our partner and our therapist knows of that us ourselves are not aware of. We have about a set 7 or 8 that we constantly are throughout the day, and they're in the headspace. I'm a very switchy system. We switch with a lot of communication between those 7 to 8 alters. Our system is made up mostly of little members. We do have older members, but they don't necessarily like the front.
So you use a lot of words there that I'm going to ask you about.
Okay.
So what is a system exactly? That's the everything, that's all the different alters and everything, that's the whole, it's you as a package.
Yeah, so a system is generally a term referred to as a body that has a presence of 2 or more alters. So I'm not sure if you have DID, but if you did have DID, okay. So you wouldn't be referred to as a system. A lot of people in the DID community, we have like our own language or lingo. Some people are frowned upon with this. Some systems find this term frowned upon, but I would refer to you as what's called a singleton, since you are a body that houses one person, if that makes sense. And we are 30 plus or more. So that's why we are a system. And a system is a very fluid term. It it's so different from system to system. What my system may be different to another system. And basically, we're just a group of people that share a body that got our brain and body through a traumatic experience to keep the functioning flesh alive.
Right, right. It's like a coping mechanism.
Exactly.
Okay. So then fronting, that's when well, actually, first alter. An alter is one of the quote unquote personalities that come through.
Yes. So an alter is what makes up the system. Generally, there are two or more required for the diagnosis. And alters are like unique individual people inside one body. So, like, we have alters that are left handed, we have alters that are right handed, we have alters that are ambidextrous, we have alters that have their own thoughts, voice, and opinion. We have alters that have separate allergies and likes for taste and dislikes. So it's like a big house up in here.
And then so then fronting is when one particular alter is kind of managing the physical body.
Yes. So a way that we like to explain fronting is, say you see your mic in front of you. If you were to touch that mic, so you're actually engaging with something external in your environment. You can actually touch it, you can feel it, you can understand what that feels like, what it sounds like when you touch it. So when an alter is fully fronting, so I'm very blended right now, but if I Juno Bean was just the one out and I went to like touch this stuffed animal, I am fronting, I'm the one touching it, I'm the one using the body and whatnot. So I'm the one engaging with external stimuli, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So far, so good.
Woo!
This all makes sense. Yes. And then the word littles, I've heard a few people with DID use, and that's when an alter is a child.
Yes. So little members in a system are genuinely generally 11 or younger. Some like other older would be kind of like a kid or whatnot. So little members are members that are stuck in a regressed mentality. It's not regression, they're actually stuck at that age. So I'm a 6-year old alter. So I genuinely have the mind of a 6-year old. My body acts as though as a 6-year old. A lot of different alters in our system, and this could vary for other systems. When they are in the headspace, they see themselves differently. So we have an inner world, and with our little members, we all look different than we actually do, which is why we tend to avoid the mirror.
Interesting. You mentioned trauma. Is DID generally diagnosed and caused from trauma?
Yes, so there's other disorders like otherwise specified dissociative disorders, OSDD, and I can't go into much detail on that, but what I can go into detail is dissociative identity disorder. So when you were a child, when you were born, just like any other person, there's amnesiatic barriers in your brain. And as you get older, around the age 9 or so, that personality fully develops. So what that means is as you start to experience real world interaction and whatnot with your parents or your environment, those amnesiatic barriers will go down. So it won't just be crying because you're hungry. It would be, Mommy, I'm hungry. And then it wouldn't just be like, oh, I'm hungry for a bottle. You'll have the opinion of, oh, I would like my cereal or whatever, if that makes sense. So when those go down, you start to experience, opinions, whatnot, pretty much a full form personality. And with dissociative identity disorder, you have to, in order to get this diagnosis, sadly, you have to be stuck in a prolonged traumatic environment. With that being said, each alter ends up developing a form of CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And when that happens at a very young age, it's very hard on the brain. So those amnesiatic barriers end up staying up, and it doesn't just end there. So let's say all those barriers are up and something else traumatic happens, which happened with us, that would cause a split, which means another amnesiatic barrier going up in the brain. And each split is housed in a certain part, like each member's housed in a certain part of the brain, which is why each alters have different memories and trauma memories and whatnot. So it's a very, very complex trauma disorder, very fluid to each system. And for DID, you have to have prolonged extend trauma, at least before the age 9.
And so the reason the brain does that, it's to cope with the trauma. It's to, like, as the trauma is happening, you can kind of disassociate and go, bloop, I'm not dealing with what's happening right now. So it's like kind of a coping defense mechanism.
Yeah, so it's actually the way we like to refer to it's actually a survival disorder. So when you're stuck in traumatic environments at such a young age, you actually need your mother or your father to help teach you how to regulate your emotions and your feelings. So with this disorder, it's actually how we perceive it is meant to keep the body alive and the brain alive. So just keep you moving like a chess pawn, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's survival disorder, and that's why it remains fairly dormant until people end up in safe places or in therapy, where the switching ends up being more co-conscious, where you're aware of each other, whereas before it would be dormant to the system and the people around.
Hmm. You're very informative. Thank you for this.
Yeah, love spreading mental health awareness. We've been learning a lot. It's actually something that our old host used to do when she was a runway model. So we're
What?
good at
You were run?
speaking.
You're is that host or that altar still around, the original? I don't know what you call that. I'm sorry if I'm.
I'm not sure if she's the original. Her name is Kitty. She actually went dormant 4 years ago due to an unfortunate event that was very traumatic that created three splits. Me, Daisy, no, two splits. Me, Juno Bean, and a little altered Daisy. And Kitty went dormant, if that makes sense. And she actually ended up being a mental health advocate and model because she ended up getting through a rough divorce where she was controlled in every aspect, as well as with the family and whatnot. So she met a lot of people online. The online world was a real safe haven for her. And there were these people sharing their experiences, their mental health experiences, sharing the bad, sharing the good. And that group of people were actually models. So she ended up going to casting calls, and she actually works with World Rhino Productions at the moment. And she's a mental health advocate and influencer for them, but she has not been around since, when was that last Christmas, that trip out there where we did our interview? Oh, she was? Well, I don't remember.
When you guys were going through the mix.
Oh, well, actually, Kitty actually fronted last week because she holds a specific trauma, and that trauma ended up getting brought up. So she ended up fronting for a therapy session and for Cody, but I barely remembered that.
So, yeah, you do you not remember when you switch ever, or is it sometimes you remember, sometimes you don't? It's whatever the brain lets you.
So before we even had awareness of each other, there are certain alters that I don't really communicate co-conscious with very well. But like I said, there's those 7 to 8 that we have. So I can switch fluidly. And what that means is without being robbed of memory and awareness with Jer Bear, with Lizzie, with Sky, with Minnie. However, Lizzie and Jer Bear are what's called gatekeepers. So let's say Jerry fronted out in a negative to handle a negative situation. He's the protector of our little alters. And let's say a little alter was upset or experiencing something in the environment that switched him out to protect them. So he would gatekeep at least the rest of us, most of us, from fronting to be able to kind of control the situation and as well as the environment. And there's different extents to gatekeeping. So like it's not something that he could do for an extended period of time. Let's say that I have a lot of alters in the headspace way towards the front. If Jer Bear was gatekeeping and I was somewhat towards the front, I could still kind of see and hear what's going on, but it really just depends on the trigger and what is happening in that moment.
That Jer Bear kind of is the protector. He doesn't want you to remember, so then he keeps the memories to himself.
Yes. So like he is a trauma holder. Jer Bear is specifically the trauma holder to our sexual assault trauma that we experienced at a young age. We do have older alters that are also trauma holders from the abuse and sexual assault that we did experience at an older age, so 11 or older, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It's yeah, it's all very interesting, and I it, I don't know how. Is it hard living a normal life, like because you're a wife, you're a mother, um, having this disorder?
Yes, so it's very, very debilitating, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Um, so let's say that I were to go into the store. We had a situation recently where it was cold out. Our little alter, Billy. Billy is fairly nonverbal. She's working on some words. She can say pink. She loves pink. She also cannot really, she doesn't know how to use the bathroom. She doesn't know how to use her hands. Like all those things that you as a child go through in developmental stages, she did not get those because of our lack of being attended to at that developing age. So she actually went to Walmart with Cody, and Cody, for that at that point, would be kind of like a father figure to this alter rather than an intimate partner or something. So like more like a caregiver father figure type role with that alter, and went and helped pick out pull ups and whatnot. And of course, as we were leaving, the only thing on Billy's mind was someone's going to laugh at me because I'm buying pull ups. When we ended up getting laughed at, people laughed at us 5 feet away. It's because we were in an adult onesie where I kind of have that mentality and understanding of, they're going to laugh because they're not used to seeing something. Whereas Billy ended up uh, trying to hold her bathroom needs in all night, causing us to stay up all night because she was upset that she thought people were laughing at her for the need of her pull-ups. And I had no awareness of this. I had my own understanding and my own opinion on what happened. So the next day, Billy ended up actually fronting and talking about what happened. I'm like, oh, that's why I didn't sleep. That's why they fought off my meds all night. So little things like that can really affect when you're a mother or when you're just trying to be a functioning person in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it causes extreme amount of emotional stress that I just don't have, that everyone in the system has. So imagine 30 plus people being upset for maybe different things or the same things. That's 30 plus people that then need to cope and go through and process something at their own pace and at their own need and at their own will. And that's very hard. It causes extreme dissociation, kind of like when you're in the inner world, experiencing all those emotions and overwhelming feelings. And when that happens, it's very paralyzing. So I won't be able to recognize that my child is crying. I won't be able to recognize that my child needs to eat, or if that makes sense. So that is why we have care, not just for my needs, but for our partner and for our child. And our child does have to go to the babysitter. She is raised by an entire village of people because how debilitating this disorder can get. However, I think the hardest part about it is we have days where we just have complete amnesiatic episodes where we don't know who we are. We don't know where we are. We don't know who our partner is. We don't know that we had a child. We don't know who our child is. And that's why we have this lovely letter from our psychiatrist that we actually put on TikTok. And we have pictures of our partners and what we look like and what our partners look like. And we have a life alert button for when that happens because we don't want them to go outside and get lost.
Mm.
And, that is not just traumatizing for us, but it's very traumatizing for the people around us that love and care about us. I mean, it's got to be hard for our partner to be trying to handle that situation and we think that they're lying, because I mean, like, imagine not knowing anything, hearing a bunch of voices in your head and them telling you, oh, you share a body with multiple people. Someone would think, hey, what's up, am I kidnapped? You
Right.
know what I mean? And then for our child, there will be times where I will completely forget she exists, completely forget that we had given birth. And that is very, very traumatic for a child, especially at a young age, and especially when they have a growing brain. And that's why we have things such as family therapy that she's going to be very much so part of, so that she understands that forgetting is not something that we're willingly doing, but it's also because that comes with trauma for her. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? So she
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to know that she has a system of people that she can talk to in a controlled environment to be able to talk about those things, because no one wants their mom or their parent. We consider her we consider for her, we're parents because we do have multiple different genders. So we don't just go by mom, we go by dad, we go by Jer Bear, we go by Lizzie, and she's already recognizing those different states in us. She specifically loves Jer Bear because Jer Bear is a lot stronger than the rest of us in the system. So he can hold her up longer and play with her and stuff. And she loves Lizzie because Lizzie loves reading her books. And actually, it was really funny because Jer Bear and our partner were reading her books, and we were taking turns page by page. And she would get upset when Cody, our partner, would start reading because he was a very different type of reader style. Well, where Jer Bear is a little bit delayed and is slower in voice. So like she was like, I like when Jer Bear reads, not when he reads. So it was really,
Wow. That is extremely complicated.
yeah.
Um, and also, I mean, I don't want to sound stupid, but it's fascinating what our brains can do, and what your brain has done in, in order to survive. But
Exactly.
but it's extremely crippling at the same time. And so when your partner Cody, when you guys met, were you already diagnosed with this, and like you already had alters?
Yes. So I was diagnosed, I think, 4 years ago, and the alters always exist, but like I said previously, they remain somewhat dormant. So instead of fully coming out and fronting to the point where they're like, I know I'm squishing this, it's more so we were just a bunch of chess pieces where we needed to be and when we needed to be, masking and dormantly as what would be considered a normal person in that time and place, which is what the host is used for. And I'm the current host of that system, of our system right now.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting. So
yeah.
Cody must be a very empathetic and patient and caring person to want to have a relationship with you and to have a family.
Yeah. So, we have been a mental health advocate from as long as we can remember. On social media, that was our only outlet to kind of express what was happening in our life. So we had a lot of people when we moved out here that ended up kind of knowing who we are and following our journey, and he was one of them.
Ah.
And so he was aware of a lot of the alters when we haven't even met him yet. And it does take a very nurturing partner. Like I said, like littles can't consent, and we and he would never ask that, which is what he just said, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Our child was planned. Um, it was something that our sexual alter, her name is Domino. She does have a private name that she knows when that name is said that it's safe for her to have those intimate relations. Whereas with someone were to say Domino, Domino is aware that this is just for educational purposes.
Gotcha. Hmm.
Yeah, but it does. a very nurturing man, a very patient man. Um, and we honestly, a lot of the times, end up feeling really bad for our partners because, like, we have a caregiver, a legal caregiver that comes in our house every day. Her name is Stormy. When she leaves from her scheduled time, what uneducated people don't seem to understand is that our need for care does not go away. Our need for our littles to have care, our littles to have food made for them, our littles to be reminded to drink water or use the bathroom or feed us, like that need for care does not disappear. So a lot of the uneducated online world sees little alters or relationships such as though as kinks. So a lot of the time, our partner ends up being shamed and called the P word, like a pedophile and whatnot. And that makes us feel horrible. But it's something that we have noticed happens to systems around the world. And it's really horrible. But like I said, littles can't consent. He's not engaging with our littles that way. He's coloring with them. He's playing dolls with them. He's stimming with them. He's watching cartoons with them. He's giving them water. He's giving them hugs when they ask for a hug. You know what I mean? He's literally taking care of a newborn. She's almost 6 months, and all of us. He's
Yeah.
got a hand school.
Wow. That would be, yeah, that would be a challenge. Being, yeah. I'm just trying to think if I would have I don't think I'm that nurturing. I think I'd be like, oh, this lady's amazing, but I just couldn't. like you said, like there's some of your alters that need pull-ups, and yeah, and it's so fascinating. I'm sorry, it's just so.
Pull up part. I hate diaper rash, man.
Well, as a 45-year-old man, I get diaper rash too somehow. I don't know how or why, but anyway, we won't talk about my diaper rash. So yeah, so that's incredible, and then it's also fascinating that you can have an alter that's left-handed and one that's right-handed, one that like may have a limp, or one that's. Do you have one that's autistic and others aren't?
The mental health issues do kind of affect the whole system. However, there are alters that prominently affects more. So we have alternating Susie. She actually has Tourette's and tics. She's the only one that we've experienced that has the vocal tics because of how vocal tics are created. And so those are her memories, the words that she's remembering and that she repeats, if that makes sense. Whereas the tics can end up affecting the whole system when that alter is fronting. So when alters are co-con or blended, they experience and share some of the emotions. So like, let's say I'm just happy and dandy and Lizzie is upset, but she's towards the front. I could then start bleeding, which is called experiencing the emotions that she's having, and I could start crying her tears, whereas they are not mine. And I'll have to go in the headspace and be like, what's going on? And I can tell by who's upset by the voice, what they're upset about and whatnot. It affects each alter differently, if that makes sense. Because like
I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't.
my autistic tendencies are very different than Jer Bear's autistic tendencies, or his actions or behaviors. The way that I choose to cope and stim and do healthy coping mechanisms is different to how Jer Bear would do those things. He has favorite things and stuff that I don't have. A big thing with autism is like a tactile dysfunction. There are certain foods that I can't put in my mouth that Jerry can. There are certain foods that Jerry can put in his mouth that I can't.
And you also get seizures, or do all the alters get seizures?
All of us do. So we are diagnosed with psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. That's PNES for short. It varies person to person because normal people that are singletons as yourself can also develop this disorder. I don't think there is genuinely a cause. But we do have triggers. So extreme weather change for our system will trigger those seizures, specifically cold, because of our own trauma of having to be locked outside in 20 below weather till late at night. So that's one trigger that will trigger our seizures. Any emotional, extreme emotional or physical distress as well will trigger those seizures. And when we do have those seizures, they can be tonic clonic grand mals, partial focals. So we end up sometimes are the ones that we call our little seizures are what's referred to as partial focals. They'll just affect the right half or the left half, or they'll alternate from the right to the left. And then we have grand mals, which is when the whole body convulses and seizes. There is no brain activity or brain damage that's going on except for falling and hitting your head or pulling muscles and the muscle damage of seizing for prolonged periods of time.
So it's not epilepsy where it's like a physical brain thing that's happening. It's like a almost like a psychotic episode or something.
Yes, kind of like a psychotic break in a way. We had the seizures for about 4 to 5 years now, and um, so we ended up having to get like that little machine that they put on your head to make sure it wasn't like epilepsy, and it was not epilepsy. So we got diagnosed with PNES. To give you an example on how it can be triggered, we were stuck kind of in a very traumatic place at one point in time where it was not a healthy place. We had no medication, we had no diagnosis, we had no awareness, we had no help, we had no therapy because we moved out here and didn't know what basic people know is that your insurance gets cut and you have to reapply. So we were actually very abusive during this time, especially to the people around us, because we had no awareness of what was going on, no medicine, no help. And being around trauma when you are traumatized is traumatizing for everyone in the household. And in this household, we were having at least 15 seizures a day. It got to a point where we got muscle dystrophy so bad 2 times, we had to relearn how to walk. So, and we had to do those things on our own, like we wanted to walk. So we had to do those things on our own. And now that years later, 3 to 4 years later, we've been in extensive therapy, extensive treatment, extensive EMDR, a safe environment, communication with our partner. I did get a seizure last night, but other than that, it's been like 2 to 3 a month.
So it's a bit you can kind of deal with them then. It's not, and they're not always grand mal. Sometimes it's like
Yeah, they're not
okay.
always. Sometimes they're little. Sometimes, I get about a couple seconds of a window when I can tell I'm gonna have one. So, we were at Walmart and I knew I felt seizury and I just wanted to rush everything, get it done, and go. I ended up having one on the ground towards the back and kind of in private, kind of in between the aisles or whatnot with our partner. I can't drive and be in places like this alone, so he's always with us. And then I got up too fast because I wanted to get up out of embarrassment or out of fear that emergency responses would come, which for us is a trigger, and went right back into it. Then I kind of took our time, and then we got back up and we had our baby in the stroller, and Cody had a thing of water and a thing of dog food. And we were walking out, and I was like, I'm going to have a seizure. Like, I could feel it, like right then and there, like grandma. I could tell, and I had either a second to put myself on the ground or a second to move the baby stroller out of my way. So that's what I did. And of course, it was right when we were walking out of Walmart. So everyone saw we planked back, bashed our head on the ground, like completely. Like it was very traumatizing, especially because we were like, all we were worried about at that point was the baby. So, we ended up having to go to the doctor and make sure we got our head checked out. We've gotten a couple concussions in the past from these seizures and improper care of the people around us, if that makes sense. They're very, very scary.
How often do people accuse you of faking? Because I
Oh, all the
yeah, because I mean, for one thing, I mean, it does sound almost like science fiction, so I kind of get it, but I wouldn't go around accusing anyone of faking it. But I've even listened to like podcasts and stuff where there's like
Yeah, we.
psychiatrists that don't even. Sorry, sorry, there was a bit of a lag
Oh
there.
yeah. Oh, yeah. You just said how psychiatrists don't even believe in it. That is so true. So, we actually went to our first psychiatrist out here, and he told us DID is not real. The presence of alters is demonic possession, and you need to leave my office right now. And keep in mind, we thought, coming from a religious trauma family, we thought that we were being possessed around the time we started gaining awareness, and these alters were trying to come out and talk in front. And Lizzie's not a demon. She's a 4-year-old alter that just popped out. And our partner during that time was like, bruh, you have DID. And it was so funny because she would call us Jekyll and Hyde all the time because she noticed the dormant switching and where we did not. So, yeah, we've had one psychiatrist do that to us. Thank goodness. His name was. He does not work there anymore. He's actually caused a lot of damage to a lot of people in the Gillette community. And now we have an amazing psychiatrist, an amazing team. You know, it's just amazing. Like they know each different alter. Our body name is a severe trigger. It's actually not an alter. We had our name changed when we were 7, when we were adopted. And that alter is that's just a name, a label on the body. It's not even an alter, if that makes sense. So when you have to receive medications or treatment, it would always trigger a negative response whenever they would say that name. And to give you kind of an understanding on how much of a trigger that is, we take a medication. This medication is a blood pressure medication to lower our blood pressure during extreme anxiety events. We can take it up to 3 times a day. So we ended up taking this medication, and our nurse, our registered nurse, KT, that comes in, ended up making a phone call in front of us saying that name. This medication is supposed to lower the blood pressure. She ended up checking our blood pressure and our heart rate, and it was like 170 over something. Like it was really high on both ends. And she's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, you just said the wrong name." And she was like, "But you just took that medication." I'm like, "Yeah, I can mask it pretty well, but that's how much of a trigger and how it can respond and act on the body, if that makes sense." So now we have a whole team, or even our whole birthing team knew the different alters. Our gynecologist knows the different alters. Anytime we go in for treatment, different alters can go in front and get the therapy that they want done. The whole team knows to call us at least Juno Bean, and then they can have the legal name said by Cody or his mother. This life alert button, they actually have 8 different alters on record. So if different alters do call and need for support, they know who they are and who to call them. It takes a lot of communication with the whole team, but yeah.
Oh, well, that's amazing that you have that much support and that many people understanding. So
It's time to get it.
yeah, so to have a person, some stranger or some other doctor accuse you of faking, then you're like, yeah, well, fuck you. I got a whole team. So
Yeah. In the DID community, is fake claiming is something that everyone's going to do. We don't participate in it because if there is someone out there that genuinely thinks they have DID, they could have it, or they could have some other problem that they need mental health help for.
absolutely.
So we in any of that. It's something that happens to everyone, and all you can kind of do is say what the uneducated needs to hear and move on from it, if that makes sense.
Well, that's the thing. If someone is faking it, well, there's obviously something wrong with them if they want to fake having a mental illness, so that they may not have that mental illness, but there's something's going on there anyway.
Exactly. It deserves help whether they're faking something or not.
Yeah. The other fascinating thing is your doctor. That one doctor didn't believe you, but said you're actually possessed by demons. To me, that's even more bizarre than what DID is.
A lot of people in the medical community do not believe in it specifically for religious beliefs. That's why a lot of people with DID end up with exorcisms or shamans for help rather than what they actually need.
So DID is a disorder. In other disorders, you can, it's not cure, it's like you're able to maintain it. Um,
Yes.
so you're able to treat it to the point that there's no more symptoms. You still have it, but you're able to maintain not having the symptoms. So is there treatment? What does treatment look like, I guess?
Okay,
Oh my
so
God, that was hard.
trauma very hard. So a trauma-based disorder, a lot of the times that's EMDR, that's talk therapy, that's play therapy. It's alters working through repressed memories. They can come and go. They can come in ways where they affect you for weeks, which at that point you would need to go through EMDR to be able to get through the trauma repressed memories rather than get stuck on the loop, if that makes sense. Um, so with DID, you can actually get to an integrated form, if that makes sense. Not a lot of systems agree with trying to work through treatment to get to an integrated form, if that makes sense. But we actually have had times where we have had pure integration. And for us, what that looks like is between 8 of the alters that we have somewhat of integration with, we can all share memories with each other. We can all experience each other's bad memories, the positive memories. We can get through life together as the 8 of us as a whole, if that makes sense, where we can actually function a bit more. And the symptoms that we do have, we actually have a whole medication regimen, and we have a whole box of different toys and different objects for different alters that help. So one of our biggest thing that we experience is hallucinations, and it's auditory, tactile, visual, all of those, you name it. So one common color that none of us hallucinate is pink. So we kind of surround ourselves with pink, because at least at that point we know what's real and what's not. Whereas another system may have a different color that they don't hallucinate. Let's say where we were like, I don't know, we literally have this whole bin over here where if we want to kind of tell who we are throughout the day, Minnie put the bows in this morning. Kitty did the makeup. I chose this vest because it makes me feel more comfortable. And someone else chose this. And we have different items surrounding us. And those items give us a sense of integration, awareness of who we are as a person, like looking at ourselves, if that makes sense. Whereas we have the memory of what we did today, but I can at least look at our body and go, okay, someone, I know who did this, I know who did that. And that does not come easy. That has taken over 4 years of hiding in a closet and recording everything that we were doing and rewatching it so that we knew who wore the bows, who did this, who did that, who likes to draw this, who draws this way, who draws that way. And we kind of use that in a way on TikTok to our advantage because our alters like to be seen. We like to be seen for who we are, even though we're in a body. Even if we're multiple blended at once, we want to be seen. So our TikTok knows Minnie loves these bows. They know that Mickey is obsessed with purple and this headband. Our sister, a lot of people have actually backlashed on that and said like they only switch if they change outfits. I'm like, no, our alters like to play dress up. We like to dress in what we want, and in a way, it's how we're communicating with our fan base and the people that we're educating, if that makes sense.
How do you find the people on TikTok? It's more positive than negative. Otherwise, you would keep doing it. I suppose you find out very supportive.
Yeah. So our partner and with modeling, we've been on Denver Fashion Week. We've done so much extensive modeling to the point where our body is perceived as an object, just depending on different opinions and thoughts and whatnot, if that makes sense. So we are very, very used to and acquainted with hate per se, if that makes sense, because the way we hate is we see it as either the uneducated or trolling. So whenever there's something commented, we say what we need to for the people actually wanting to be educated. And then once it gets kind of into a battle or trolling, if that makes sense, that's when we just kind of block, delete, move on, if that makes sense. Because like we don't want misinformation spread. So if there is something that's misinformation, even if it's said in a negative way, we can go ahead and on there educate rather than participate in the negativity.
And some of them are just for fun. Some of the videos, right? Like it's just
Oh, yeah. So
yeah.
that's actually something we had to work very hard on. Normally, we would go on TikTok and we would be all about the education. We would be very, very, yeah, advocating and whatnot. And the little alters, we would make messes in the house because we would be like, no, Mickey has to wear her purple so that they know it's Mickey, so that they see it as real, blah, blah, blah. Where it kind of got to the point where it was not healthy for us. So we have actually been starting to let the littles come out and play more on there, kind of like what if they want to put something cute on and they want to do a certain sound or you know what I mean? And it's more so a coping mechanism now for each alter in their own different way. So we've actually been working more on the fun side of those things, if that makes sense, because it is somewhat of an entertainment platform and they like to be entertained. So, and they like to entertain others as well, because who doesn't like taking turns fronting in the body and experiencing, tasting, seeing, hearing? You know, it's amazing what senses can do to the body. And for each alter, it's different. And it's a controlled way in a safe space that we have that we can interact and control how they or we want to do something, whether as if we were out in public and people were causing switches, blah, 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 like negative ways or ways that we weren't expecting or ready for. It's something that we can actually work on together, which gets us to know each other more.
So the more someone fronts, the more you get the other alters get to know them.
Exactly, because especially when they're all in the headspace, especially when we have another partner, especially when we have videos, we all go back and like each other's videos. That's why you've noticed about every one of our videos is liked. It doesn't matter if it's still harder, they will continue liking and whatnot. So like we know what alters like what content between different alters. We also have a rule where we do not take down any alters videos unless it's the alter itself taking it down. And we have that rule because I have taken down videos because I was embarrassed of how I was acting. I didn't recognize it wasn't me, and then that would cause fights in our system. And it's not fun when you have over 30 different people yelling and fighting in your head. That's what can trigger a seizure. That's what can cause severe dissociative amnesia. You know, that's not healthy for our system. So we do have rules between each other and respect each other's space and belongings. Jer Bear is all for sharing, but he will not share his clothes. And the only reason being is because he gets very frustrated when he can't find something. Whereas the rest of the alters will be like, use whatever you want, play with whatever you want. And then they enjoy looking for it later and finding it later, if that makes sense.
You are fascinating. And I'm
Yay.
sorry, but at the same time, I'm so sorry that you are fascinating because of the intense trauma that caused it. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's so complex. It's such a mind twist to be supportive, but not also like curious and you know what I mean. Like I don't know.
Yeah, we kind of think of ourselves kind of as like our whole system is like the thesaurus to our brain. That makes sense.
That's a good way to put that. What are some of the stigmas of DID? Or any of the stigmas of any of the disorders or anything that you have? What doesn't matter the alter. What are some of the stigmas you hate and
So yeah, the big thing that we do not like, of course, are when little alters are being seen as a kink, if that makes sense. Because it's not another stigma that we do not like is what revolves around the adult pacifier. Oral stimming is a huge help. And it's not just because the littles want to feel little. It's not just because of that. It's literally a stim toy. And oral stimming is amazing. We are a chronic nail biter to the point where we have arthritis in our hands. We've been doing it since we were 2. We have these mitts specifically for Raynaud's and for arthritis. And they have little beans in them. So we'll chew on the beans or they'll be warmed up. And they hide our hands. We also have a variety of stim toys, especially the pacifier. The pacifier for us is one that we have had to learn to hold around confidently. Otherwise, we're destroying our fingers and our teeth. So even in public, we'll have to be chewing on it and whatnot. And we actually, due to the fear of being judged, came up with something, a situation where if someone were to be like, why the heck are you doing that? We would just be like, you need one of these and walk away because it means pacify, to pacify, if that makes sense. So I would do that. Another stigma that we don't like with the PNES, with psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, is people say they are not real seizures, and they are very real. They are not epileptic. It's not epilepsy, but they are very real. They're very damaging to the body, and it's very real. The person doesn't, or the alters don't know that we're not doing it willingly. Imagine having your entire body start freaking out and moving. So like if you were just sitting here and your hand just raises and you'll be like, I don't know why I'm doing that. I don't know what's happening. That's kind of scary. And with DID, I'll have my hand up and then down, which is called an intrusive action, because an alter will just flail something or go to do something while I'm fronting, and that's called an intrusive action. And that's scary just in itself when you don't have awareness of each other. But now that we have awareness, I know which alters tend to be more intrusive. We have an alter that likes to growl. And whenever I'm growling or curling my lip like that, I know it's the growly alter near the headspace. But that's the only way it communicates. And it's controlling the body while I'm fronting. Like, I didn't do that. You know what I mean? And that's scary, just as much as it would be to have your whole entire body convulsing to the point where you can feel muscles tearing, like, and you can't stop it. So it's not something, and people like to say, like, oh, we'll go to treatment, go get help, you can control it. Yes, to an extent, because it's kind of like a psychotic break. It's stress induced. Each alter or each person or system it's different for, and it is caused by our extensive physical and mental health trauma, which is part of our DID, and we just experience those seizures, and they can't be cured. They cannot. Just like when you have medication, it cannot fix everything that's wrong with you. You can use it as a coping skill, and you use other coping skills. So let's say I take my anxiety medication. I know it's going to lower my heart rate. I know it's going to do all that. So I'm not going to get up and try to start dancing or moving around because I'm just going to fall down dizzy. What I can do, however, is while my brain has the ability to be slowed down with the help of this medication, I can put something fun on to watch. So I'm not constantly staying on the trauma loop in my brain that's causing the extreme anxiety or the memories. I can go ahead and grab a toy and play with it and try to zone out on it.
So that's when you get like the PTSD crossover with DID. You do have one alter that's a cat. Is that right?
Yeah. So with our trauma, a lot of it has to do with being locked outside in cold weather. And anytime we saw cats in movies, anytime we weren't allowed to have cats, anytime I would be around anywhere, cats were always inside animals, kept inside. So they got to stay inside where it's warm, where it's safe, where there's food, where there's water, if that makes sense. So we have an alter. His name is Nicky. He is a cat alter. He's actually broken a few windshields and a few items because anything dangly, he smacks. Because what is one way cats are advertised constantly online, constantly everywhere? They smack things, they break things, if that makes sense. And this alter is a very, very strong gatekeeper. Very hard to switch into and switch out of. So what that means is if this alter is fronting and I try to switch into the body to front, I can't because that cat alter is taking over everything. It's aware of everything. Cats are always aware of everything, listening to everything, looking around everywhere. And so whenever the weather's cold or whenever we have to go to therapy outside, let's say it's not telehealth or certain things that's extremely stressing multiple alters or the brain, this cat alter will come out and be like, you're inside, you're staying right there, if that makes sense. And so a lot of people just like to see it as a fun thing. But for us, imagine going into the mind of an animal. Like they handle pain differently. So Like if they want to smack something, I could burn myself for all I know. If they want to flick at the fire, you know what I mean? I don't have that human awareness that we do as humans when we're in this when we're in this animal state. It's very actually not my favorite one to switch in and out of.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. You had one video where you called out your abusers.
Yes,
Um,
I actually have that video down.
oh, you did. Oh,
So
okay.
So, kind of going back to what I said, one of the abusers was actually part of that household that I was stuck in that was giving me the seizures every day, that we ended up being very abusive to our current partner at that time. If that makes sense, like imagine being in hallucinating episodes and the people around you are feeding into those delusions where you don't
Mm,
know who is around you, who's touching you, blah, blah, blah. You're going to throw yourself through a wall just to try to get away from them. You're going to try to throw them off of you, whoever's touching you, because the touch that they're trying to give you, they see as comfort, whereas for you, it's not. So like I've broken things, I've caused damage, and being around that, like it does traumatize other people. However, we've had to create healthy distance from these people where we care at a distance. And it's traumatizing, and we spend all day talking about the abuse that we went through, where we very ever rarely get the mentality where we can go over what we've done and what we've experienced and what we've caused other people to experience, because it's very hard for us to remember those things when in delusional states or whatnot. So we ended up trauma bonding with this one partner, and her father was just created me and another alter Daisy. That was her split. And whenever we talk about those things online, it not just brings up my trauma and my voice, which is why we did it, so that we would have our voice in control for once. It brings up the trauma again for them too. You know what I mean? And it recreates those situations when you bring those things up. And that's not something that we had realized, because this partner of ours experienced the same abuse. They were her parents. You know what I mean? And she understands that we were in delusional episodes and stuff and did not mean the harm or the bruises, or if that makes sense. And whereas we kind of had no awareness it even happened, but that's still traumatic. It's
mm-hmm.
still traumatic for someone else. And the other abusers that we called out, they know what they did. They ain't gonna come after me. We don't have to worry about it. But the last name we mentioned on that video brought up a lot of trauma for our older partner, or our past partner, and they're still sadly being stuck in that household. Like we don't need to bring that up anymore. So that was actually kind of an eye-opening learning experience for us, because although we took our voice back and we tried to do it to not feel afraid anymore, it took away someone else's, if that made sense. It took away and it added to more of someone else. And it's hard being able to call people out, because especially when you're stuck in trauma, it's a two-way street, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we don't think we're going to call out abusers any further. We do, however, think we're going to continue spreading awareness of what it's like being with someone that has trauma and being stuck in a trauma environment, because we've caused pain and suffering just as much as the people that caused us pain and suffering. We're a system for a reason. And imagine just being around that trauma. That's why we had to plan our child. That's why we had to make sure that there's family therapy, there's whatnot, because it's just as much as she could forget me. If she tries to touch me while I'm hallucinating, like if that were to ever happen, which it won't, because there will be therapy and awareness and whatnot, and she wouldn't be around me in those episodes, which is why we have a whole support system.
Mm-hmm.
I could very much so end up hurting my own daughter and not knowing. And that's not something that we want to do, but it's something we've done to people in the past. And that's how we have to kind of learn from those experiences. And that's one thing that a lot of people with trauma don't shed light on, is the trauma bonding that happens, and the actions and the environment that's required for trauma bonding, and what that can do to people in the future, physically or mentally, as well as the people around them.
Well, you're very well spoken, and you're
Okay.
very well informed.
we're very informative because everything that happened to us is like literally like I said, a thesaurus of our brain. So we only have the logical understandings of each other, if that makes sense, which makes you so articulate because it's something that you're literally experiencing. You feel your brain doing. Whereas, let's say someone is schizophrenic without their medication, they're stuck in a delusional psychotic break, unaware of what they're seeing or hearing is not real. Well, like, do you know what I mean? They have to have that medication to be able to have that understanding and awareness of what is going on in their body. It's something that people with DID actually live with. And once you start to gain awareness of each other and learn, I know exactly what I can use for a switch positively to get a certain alter out. Will it work every time? Well, it depends. If I'm in a safe environment that's a recognizable place and the altar's somewhat towards the front, and I specifically grab an item that altar likes and wave it around or do whatever, it can very much so more than likely trigger a positive switch. Whereas, let's say someone took a cat laser in a brand new place or environment, and this alter has been switched out negatively before in environments it does not recognize, it's going to pop into the headspace a little bit closer, not fully fronting, and be like, nah, fuck you.
Mm.
I mean, it's like, I'm not coming out. So like it's something that we have to literally learn, like a puzzle piece, or like putting apart a computer and taking it apart. That's our brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why a lot of people with DID are very well spoken like that, because we think of ourselves like a watch, just gears or something. You know what I mean? It's very complex.
Um, so you're able to actually switch on your own?
I so I since you're a new face that we have not seen, the other alters can see your faces. I've had alters background being like, "Who is that? What are you talking about? You're gonna get us in trouble." All these other thoughts. That's why there's no reason why I'm going to try to encourage a switch. The
Right.
eight that we do kind of switch in and out, definitely present. They can definitely see what's going on, but we're very much so in protector mode. I'm only a 6-year-old alter, but I have to act as though how I'm being presented to by someone else. So it's more so for educational purposes, and the way we're speaking, the way we're talking is more so for education, which triggers out a very teachering response from me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can, let's say that if you did, there's negative switches too. If you were to do something or to specifically say, tell me this, tell me that, it would trigger a very negative response and a switch. And that's not what we want here.
Right, right. And that's why you wanted me to email you
The
the
question,
questions first, right? So that something like that wouldn't happen. And I would,
yes. So
I mean, I
the
don't
reason,
want you to go through anything you don't want to go through. So
exactly,
I appreciate that.
we do too. And the questions also helped us because emailing us the questions, then we know not all of us have an awareness on time and how long we're talking to you. Alters could look at you and forget who you are, and then maybe think you're someone else and try and fret. But the fact that we knew everything that's going to be talked about, that's when they know it's when this conversation's done and we're not talking about these things anymore. That's when I'm probably going to go in my room and start playing with stuff and do other stuff, because they know that task for the day has been done, because there's nothing stemming those memories or this conversation, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. You are fascinating. And I'm so, I don't know. I don't want to sound insensitive or like, I'm so scared of saying the wrong thing. You know?
It's a lot of we say the wrong thing. Everyone's gonna say the wrong thing because no one really knows what the right thing is to say to someone, especially with trauma, because trauma is fluid.
Yeah. Yeah.
We prepare ourselves for any types of triggers that could happen for this conversation. So
okay. Well, one is fascinating. Two, it's heartbreaking because of how it happened. Do you ever? I'm assuming the answer, but do you wish you never had DID?
there are times when the physical episodes are so overwhelming that we'll say we hate having it, but we can't imagine the life that we have without them. I mean, it's a very debilitating thing. It's very hard, but at least we have a whole system to get through it together.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's we don't love it, but we think we need each other. We need each other. We need each other to survive. So, I mean, we don't love it when we get new system members and new splits happen, because what has to happen for new splits to be created? But we do welcome and encourage those alters to front freely rather than to just front and deal with trauma. So, for an example, we have a sexual alter. That alter was only known to trigger out to handle sexual relationships. Domina has been practicing fronting and figuring out what she likes, what TV shows she likes, what activities she likes, where it's not related to sexual things, if that makes sense. So we encourage everyone to switch out and enjoy themselves and not the tasks that they were created for.
Well, you sound like you have a really healthy grasp on it, and that you
Long time.
yeah, I can imagine. I suppose it wasn't always this way, but
No.
so yeah, I guess you have things to be grateful for, I guess. And it's amazing that you have an empathetic partner that's nurturing, and that you have a beautiful, amazing daughter, that you have Stormy come in and help you. Oh, I forgot one question. What about your family? Your parents, and do you have siblings? Are they in your life?
I have biological siblings. We were adopted together. My biological sister is actually very, very schizophrenic from trauma. And I've been forced to do things to her by bad people. So I keep her at a healthy distance. We don't talk. We haven't talked in a long time, because imagine what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it schizophrenic and having someone in your life that had to put harm on you because they were forced, but they don't have that memory to grasp that you were forced. We also have a biological brother. His name is TJ. We actually have been talking to him. He's been learning about DID. He lives in a host home. He's out of the abuse of our family. He understands what happened with our adoptive and birth family is horrible and abuse and should never happen. Whereas before, I could not talk to him because he would just bring all these things up, how we used to people, and they'd be like, bruh, that's not normal, that's trauma. Whereas he would talk about it as it's normal. And now that he has that host home and that safe place, he knows what's up. So we do talk to him. We have step brothers and sisters that we do not talk to. They were part of the abuse. Our biological mom and dad, we do not talk to. Our adoptive mom and dad, we've had them cut out of our lives for about 5 years now. And it's the hardest, best decision we have ever made, because I mean, they knew something was wrong, especially when we reached out and talked to them about the sexual assault. When we talked to them about, hey, I'm doing this behavior, and she'd be like, oh, I thought that was just how you coped. And I've been in treatment since I was 2, and no one knew we had DID, but they thought it was just how we coped. You know what I mean? It's just not something that we can surround ourselves with. They are very anti-mental health. They pretty much say we're crazy, or whoever, our brother who's just autistic is crazy. It's just how they express mental health is with crazy, and that's not what it is.
I really, really appreciate you. I'm so glad you are in what seems like a stable place in your life now, and that you're healthy, and that you're on TikTok and educating people, and you're living your best lives.
And that's all that we could ask. It's our passion, talking about stuff like this, spreading awareness. And it's also how we cope and learn about each other. So, I mean, more knowledge for everyone.
Thank you so much for that, Junebug system. You are, like I said many times now, that you're just fascinating, and it's also heartbreaking why you have DID, but it's just fascinating how brains can do what they do. And I just wish you all the best of luck, and I'm so glad you have such a loving partner and a beautiful child and a great support system right now. Hey, if you want to help people with mental health issues, or help advocate some mental health things, one of the best ways you can do that is actually support this podcast. Many people have spoken openly and candidly to me, and lots of people have listened and have gotten lots of help and related, and the podcast is doing some pretty neat stuff, and it's all because of getting amazing guests One of the ways you can help the podcast get more amazing guests is by rating and reviewing the podcast on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you're listening on, and by following the podcast on Instagram at Bunny Hugs Podcast, on TikTok, Bunny Hugs Podcast, and on Facebook, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, and just telling people about the podcast. That's probably the best thing you can do, is spread the word. Let people know that, hey, there's a lot of really cool people talking about real cool things candidly and openly, and here's where you can listen to it. And if you already are following me on any of the social media things, I'm considering getting some merchandise. My wife bought me a hoodie with my logo on the back, and I've had all types of people. Well, then I posted a picture of it on Instagram, and lots of people have made comments and stuff, so it sounds like there's some people that want merchandise. If you would like some, just let me know. I'm thinking hoodies and t-shirts and stickers, of course. And if you want to hear me speak and you're in Regina on January 25th, you can come to Connexus Arts Center. It's More Joy Regina. So it's More Joy Regina. You can get tickets online, and you can come hear me talk. And if you're in Indian Head, Saskatchewan on January 13th, I will be speaking in the afternoon at the Grand Theater, and I will be recording a live podcast episode with stand-up comedian Big Daddy Taz. Plus, I got some other speaking gigs, but it's for like schools and stuff, so you can't come to those ones, I don't think. Anyway, and another thing you could do to just help yourself is to remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.